Another behind the scenes nugget here. So Stephen pitches this story to me and a couple other editors, at the end of 2020, I guess?
Yeah.
And we're like, boy, that sounds interesting, but this factory closed a while ago. It'd be interesting to see if we can bring it forward and what the legacy is today and all this. Before you go ahead, maybe you could pick away at it a little bit and find out a little bit more information and then come back to us. So Stephen ends up doing all these other stories during the year, kind of forgot all about the battery plant story. And then at the end of 2021, he comes over and says, hey, I took your advice and did a little bit more digging. And he'd assembled like 10,000 pages or something of information. He had all these interviews. And I was like, oh my goodness, he had all this stuff. It was great. So we quickly green-lighted this. And I don't know how many times we went over the story as, we built it and put it together. But one thing that really always stuck with me on each reading was your descriptions of what it was like inside the plant. And like you really put people there. Can you talk a little bit about what the working conditions were like for people there?
Yeah, so one of the challenges in addition to the documents was that this plant no longer exists. There's just like a concrete slabs really in this grass that's there. So it was really important to just try to figure out what it was like. And one of the great things about the documents, right, is it provided us names of people who had accused the company of exposing them to lead when they lived nearby. But it also provided us names of people who had worked at the company. And so that was a really great way to find people who had worked there. And as we started to find out, and as we mentioned in the story, a lot of those people have since died. And so it wasn't always successful. Or another kind of behind the scenes thing is, as we all know, numbers have changed a lot over the years in terms of people no longer have landline numbers, or people have changed their cell phones. So just finding people who maybe had a certain number in 1996, it's not going to be easy necessarily to find them in 2020, 2021, or 2022. But fortunately, we were able to find a lot of people. And that was one of the things that was really interesting, was just to have them describe what they remember. And one of the things that people really remember about working there is the heat. There were these big kind of vats that were used to melt lead and other materials that were used to make the batteries. And sometimes those could get up 800 degrees. People talked about, them looking over and seeing it being like 1,000 degrees. And it's really hard, I think, for me to even imagine what that is like. If it's 100 degrees or on a humid day in Charleston, it could feel like, we're like melting, right? But when you think about what that temperature was like, that was really just stuck with me. But then I think another detail was just the sweating, right? That people are wearing these respirators, and there's all this dust, but then they're like sweating so much that it's kind of moving around. And again, I think we have a more of appreciation of that now with having to wear just masks due to COVID. And so we all kind of know what it's like in maybe a regular environment, in an air conditioning environment, how uncomfortable it is to wear a mask all day. But imagine where it's, you're in an environment where it's really hot and you're trying to wear this mask. So that was really kind of illuminating. And then also just other aspects of the job, right? You're having to assemble these bits and pieces that go into the batteries. There's acid that's used, and the fumes from the acid was in different places of the building. So I think it was really relying on the senses that people remember, because those were still fresh in people's minds about what it was like to work there.